Hello fam! I wanted to make a special video about the upcoming solar eclipse in Aquarius on February 17th because it has potentially enormous implications and revolutionary implications, and especially for the United States, this is likely to be a month, February, where there's a before February 2026 and an after February 2026. And the world, but I really want to take some time to break down the importance of this particular eclipse, its history, the connections that as I was doing research for my Astrology of 2026 class, I really got into the wormhole of this particular eclipse cycle and the historical trends related with this particular eclipse are really profound and a lot to pay attention to. So I want to get to all of that in a moment. But if you're new to this channel or you're new to me, my name is Nick Lasky. I'm a professional astrologer and metaphysical teacher of various subjects. Astrology is my passion, so is cacao and tarot and all forms of divination and ceremony. And this is a crossroads time, certainly for the United States, certainly for the world, and certainly for all of us. I mean, don't you feel it yourself? Like right now, life seems to be much more intense, or there's some important kind of endings or new beginnings that are on the horizon, and decisions are really important in this regard, and perhaps you feel that your hand is being forced in some kind of way. That's this energy that right now we are already in the pull, the gravitational pull, or the way I like to think about it is, the outbreath of water before a tsunami. That's this pull that the larger event or events is already taking us into. We can feel that right now at the beginning of February before the solar eclipse on February 17, 2026. And it's going to be the precise moment of exact new moon, because solar eclipses are always new moons, is going to be 7:01 a.m. East Coast time, Washington, D.C., New York City time. So let's break it down step by step, okay? Eclipses, we always have them in pairs. There's a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. There's going to be a lunar eclipse 2 weeks later on March 2nd. Perhaps I'll make another video about that. That's just as important. But solar eclipses are new moons, but they're new moons that happen to precisely line up where the sun, the moon, and the earth are exactly together in this perfect alignment, where it seems that the moon is blocking out the light of the sun. Now, we're not going to have a total solar eclipse until August, but it's close enough that it's going to be a partial eclipse. Partially, the light of the sun is blocked by the moon. And so this astronomical symbolic phenomena represents a reset. All eclipses are about some kind of death or rebirth. It's just like taking the lights out and then turning them back on, or turning your computer or an app or your phone or something like that off and turning it back on. So there's always the energy of major endings and major new beginnings. And this one is so profound because it happens to be lining up with the planet Uranus. The solar eclipse in Aquarius at the very end, 28 degrees of Aquarius, is making a 90-degree relationship with the planet Uranus at 27 degrees of Taurus. So not all eclipses, just like not all new moons, are the same. So this energy of major reset, major endings, major new beginnings, things seem to die away. It's often eclipses are associated with, major leaders, some falling away, some losing power, and then some people really being exalted and risen up to new seats of power. But it's also on a very personal level, it's an opportunity to perhaps connect with your free will in a new way and carve out a new path. And sometimes it feels like these are fated things that you don't exactly have all the choice about, but I guarantee you do. We always have a choice regardless of what's happening. The choice may not be one that the choices may not be what exactly you would like, but we do always have agency and a choice. And so eclipses bring this crossroads energy for us up that We can, in my experience with eclipses, it's basically like we're presented, like a fork in the road, or, 3 different routes. And the route that you start going down, that you choose in consciousness by the actions that you take, and especially relationship dynamics, the river starts picking up, and it becomes harder as the days go on to take another path. And then you kind of get set on that particular path. So that's the energy of eclipses. This one is in the sign of Aquarius. And Aquarius, being an air sign ruled by the planet Saturn, Aquarius energy is very forward thinking. Aquarius energy is about the collective, about what is best for the whole, for the tribe, for society, rather than its opposite sign, Leo, which is about me, look at me. And historically also, and in a larger sense, Leo is about the king or the ruler or the leader, whereas Aquarius is about the people or the majority. Aquarius also is very connected with technology, and certainly AI and all the technological advances and changes that we're experiencing right now are likely to be ramped up and explored really profoundly with this eclipse. But Aquarius, in its deepest sense, wants what's best for the whole, wants what's best for the collective, and innovates, is the sign of the inventor, creating something new. What is going to, that other people don't see. The Aquarian archetype sees, because Aquarius is often called a rebel, maybe we've always been doing it like this for these many years or decades, etc. But what if we did it like this? Wouldn't that work better? And everyone is like, well, we never thought about that. Or we've just always done it this way, like tradition, like daylight saving time. I think a lot of us could get into getting rid of daylight saving time. That's something maybe we can all agree on. Maybe, probably not. So this particular solar eclipse in Aquarius is lining up in a 90-degree relationship with Uranus. Uranus is the force of rebellion and breaking free and liberation and revolution, and wanting to any stuck, stagnant energy. Uranus comes in like a lightning strike of change. Uranus is a great disruptive force. So this is already really coloring this eclipse, which eclipses are already disruptive and indicate major shifts. But then you bring in Uranus, and it like exponentially increases that, where this is likely actually to be quite a volatile time, where there's unexpected shifts and unexpected surprises and events that really shake up the status quo, perhaps in very, very dramatic ways. Just on a just on a general level, before I get how all of this ties into the charts of the United States and what's going on, Uranus is like revolution. It's a revolutionary energy. So I would expect for sure around the timing of this eclipse, in the atmosphere, revolution, and that's in this country, but also all over the world, a breaking of the status quo that is not working for many people or a majority of the people. And therefore this urge, like we have to do something, we need to break this paradigm or this pattern of energy flow. Uranus comes in and is like, boom, things change. Often these kinds of eclipses and energies are associated with like riots or uprisings or rebellions. And so that's totally in the ballpark of what could happen. There's plenty of different ways how this could shake out, but I would have my money on that, especially here, but around the world. There's likely to be like a mass kind of mobilization and energy in the air, where it's like people feel that enough is enough, and action it's a call to action. It's a call to the status quo cannot continue as it is, and therefore something must change, and I am going to do something about that. It's that kind of motivation. So this particular eclipse, there are like so many things, boom, 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 that are lining up that make it incredibly significant for the United States of America. So the first of this is that so in addition to humans having birth charts, all people have, at the moment of your birth, we capture the solar system and its placements, and we call that a birth chart. Well, guess what? Buildings have birth charts. Relationships have birth charts. businesses have birth charts, and countries have birth charts. And so if we take a look at the birth chart of the United States of America, the most popular one, with a Sagittarius rising on July 4th, 1776, then we see that the moon in the United States chart is at 27 degrees of Aquarius, within a degree of this solar eclipse. And so in a country's chart, the moon represents the people. The moon represents the common people. Okay? The moon also represents the collective emotional vibe, the mood of the culture, of the society, like what's in the atmosphere, what's in the air. It also rules, some basic things of security and food and things like that. But so the moon in the United States is being eclipsed on February 17. And so one of the important things that this is like just doubling down is the kind of activation of the people of this country in a way of like, things need to reset, things need to change. And again, Uranus is lining up exactly with it and is bringing this rebellious, revolutionary urge. And I would imagine, in the protests that we've been seeing, in the movements that we've been seeing, in the polarization that we've been seeing, it's going to be extremely elevated as a result of this eclipse, or around the timing of this eclipse, kind of like with a steroid, injection. And so the timing, let me be clear about the timing of when things are likely to play out. So we're in eclipse season now. I really believe that eclipse season begins after the previous either new or full moon. And so we just had a full moon. And so we're in, the last full moon before the upcoming solar eclipse on February 17th. So we're in those days, we are in the build up to the eclipse. However, there is a really potent period that I want you to pay attention to in the world, and what's going to happen, but also for yourself personally in your own life. And that's 3 days before an eclipse, the day of the eclipse, and 3 days after the eclipse. And in particular, what's most important is pay attention to what seems to die or end, what seems to be reborn, what seems to, maybe like a project that you started 20 years ago and then you finished, or an old job or a relationship or something like that, that suddenly gets reborn, invigorated back into life. And then the third thing is what seems to be born, what seems to come out of nowhere, what seems to suddenly enter into your reality. Maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe someone asks you to, for a particular job, or to move somewhere, or things, you meet somebody. It's very common for important relationships to come into our lives around eclipses. So 3 days before, day of, 3 days after. But we're in eclipse season. We're in this heightened eclipse window of kind of intensity and change and shift and crossroads, all the way until the middle of March, 2 weeks after the March 2nd lunar eclipse. So really pay attention all of these days. But that heightened window is like just before and just after the eclipse. Okay, that's like the peak window. All right, so the eclipse is lining up with the moon in the United States chart. That's very significant. What's the second very significant thing? In astrology, we always look to patterns. When something keeps repeating over and over again, that's your double, triple confirmation of, oh, that's happening. Something is very clearly supported here. So the chart, the natal chart of our current president, guess what? As I pull it up here, has a late Leo rising. All right. And that means that his horizon line is 29 Leo and 29 Aquarius. He's 29 Leo rising and 29 Aquarius setting, or his descendant, which is the point of relationships. It's in a very important angle in the chart, which would rule his relationships with others. Okay? That is being eclipsed. And, whether you personally like it or not, the ruler of a country, whether it's a king, whether it's a prime minister, a president, an elected tribal leader, whatever, in a way, they become the representative of the country. And so therefore their chart also, what happens to them personally in their natal chart astrologically, impacts the country. They kind of become the, the symbolic or the figurehead that then their chart is one of the representatives, and you can see what's going to happen as well to the country. So we have the solar eclipse, this very dynamic solar eclipse, happening exactly on the moon of the United States. We have it on the descendant of our president, okay? And here's the third crazy thing that when I saw this, I just couldn't believe it, which is that this solar eclipse is happening exactly on the horizon, on the eastern horizon where sunrise happens, in Washington, D.C. And much of, around here in Virginia, where I am as well. But if we also were to look at, how eclipses would impact certain countries, we would look at how they line up with the charts of countries. And the capital of that country would be the main place you would look at, right? And so the capital of this country, Washington, D.C., the eclipse is exactly on the most sensitive point of the chart, the ascendant or the rising sign. So that's a third indication that this eclipse is going to have a tremendous implications for the United States. Okay, it's totally going to shake up the status quo and the order of things, and I fully believe that there's going to be like a before and an after. And so in a moment, I want to get to the historical patterns and trends related with this eclipse cycle, because then we're going to get into some more of my predictions about what could happen. But I also want to acknowledge right now, if you've been paying attention to the astrology of what's happening right now, especially this month, you know that one of the other huge things that's happening, if it's not one thing, it's the other. Saturn and Neptune are meeting at 0 degrees Aries on February 20th, just a few days after the eclipse. And that in and of itself is a historic, humongous, unbelievably important astrological alignment that indicates the end of an era and the beginning of a new era. And I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because that could be a whole, perhaps I'll make another video about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, but I really cover that deeply in my Consciously Design Your 2026 with astrology and divination class. If you're interested, I did a whole 3-hour breakdown of the astrology of 2026, the important dates to be aware of, one of the most positive and successful dates and one of the most challenging periods to run and hide under a cave, or maybe just don't plan your wedding or important event or something like that. Anyways, you can check that out. There'll be a link down here that you can check it out. And it's very, very reasonably priced. Anyway, but Saturn-Neptune conjunctions happen approximately every 36 years. The last time it happened was 1989. And right around the exact conjunction, the Berlin Wall came down, and almost overnight, it began the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So we're talking about huge, huge societal regime shifts and long-standing structures changing, ending, and new ones being put into place or being born. That's at the same time as this eclipse. And I really bring all of that in because this eclipse is in the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by the planet Saturn. Guess what's happening with Saturn? So what's happening with the ruler also impacts the eclipse. So the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is all mixed up in this eclipse anyways, and exactly on the eclipse, they will be together at 0 degrees of Aries, the first degree of the zodiac, the initiation of life and action. So this call for taking action and a new dream needs to be born, but also major confusion and uncertainty and kind of the solid foundation of what was known is no longer. That's also in this energy. And so there's there's a multiplying effect of like a new era is being born, wants to really be born. And so it's for each of us to find that out in our own personal lives and uniquely in our communities, etc., but also in the world. It's going to play out very dramatically this year. And February is one of the very, very important months to pay attention to. So let's get into the historical series of this eclipse, because eclipses happen approximately at the same place in the zodiac, basically the same day of the year, every 19 years. It's called the Metonic cycle, and it's very reliable and predictable in regards to trends or themes that repeat every 19 years around the same kind of eclipse. And so I'll give you just these dates of when we had an eclipse at very similar places. So February 16, 1999, there was an eclipse at 27 Aquarius, also together with Uranus. February 16, 1980, there was an eclipse at basically 27 Aquarius, and it was squaring Uranus. And then February 15, 1961, there was a 26-degree Aquarius eclipse that was opposite Uranus. So the interesting thing about these cycles is they all see all these eclipses. Not only are they in the same place in the zodiac, but they're also somehow in alignment with Uranus. That just happens to be interesting. Uranus does have, an 84-year cycle. You break that up into 4, and that becomes 21 years. So perhaps this eclipse cycle, just for now, for these many, many, decades, is really linked in with Uranus, which is very interesting. But I want to break down a few key events that happened during these eclipses, and also I would recommend that you pay attention to those time periods in your own personal life. What shifts or changes did you notice? What things ended? What new things were born? Did you begin any new projects or relationships or paths, or did you move, or health-wise? And especially, it doesn't have to be, in those days or weeks. It can also be, let's say, in the following 6 months. But especially around that time, the season of the eclipse, very noticeable and dramatic. So, February 1999 eclipse. Just 10 days before, the 46-year king of Jordan died. On February 12th, this one's perhaps the most interesting, the Senate acquits President Bill Clinton. And basically the impeachment trials ended. And so you can see how that would have been like, that was a capping moment in the collective mood. And again, all of these eclipses are happening on the moon of the United States. So you're going to see how it plugs into the United States. But talk about the collective mood or feeling and the impeachment trials with Bill Clinton and that whole scandal and unfoldment. I mean, it was a wild, with this, what is happening, and what do we do? And so anyways, some interesting things related to that, coming back. February 15th, this was 2 days before the eclipse, the Kurdish rebel leader was kidnapped or snatched by Turkey, and I think this happened somewhere in Africa. But anyways, global riots ensued. It was they were Turkey versus the Kurds, and they just kind of like, as the leader was being transported somewhere, was like kidnapped, like a heist that you would see in one of those movies of like a prisoner transport. And so huge dramatic shift. A month later, Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic joined NATO. And then a few weeks after that, the United States bombed Yugoslavia. And this was a huge turning point in NATO, where it was the first time that they, I believe, openly attacked a sovereign country. Also, just interesting, following up afterwards, a couple months after that was the Columbine shooting. And then in June of 1999, this really ties in with the Aquarius themes, Napster was released. And now we have, music sharing, but you can see how that's such an Aquarius theme of like the democratization and spreading out of music. And look where we are now. All right, so let's go. So you can see how the status quo is shaken up in many of these events. Let's go to 1980, February of 1980. On February 2nd, there was this thing called the FBI scam sting, where basically the FBI went undercover and posed as Arab sheikhs and were trying to catch congressmen with bribery and corruption, and they did actually, and it was like a huge scandal. And anyway, so that was an important, you can see the theme of like different branches or parts of the government kind of fighting each other in really huge ways. February 4th, 1980 was the birth of modern Iran. Also, of course, very prevalent and prescient in the modern kind of zeitgeist and what's happening right now. That was also a turning point in the Iran-Hostage crisis with the United States. Also, again, think about the collective mood here. And February 21st, the first online chat service, CB Simulator, basically the first online chat service was created. Okay, so we think about shifts in technology and what we can do. And then on February 22nd, 1980, there was the miracle on ice. And this was, perhaps you've seen the movie, the American Olympic hockey team beat the Soviet Union. This is like in the height of the Cold War. And it was like this huge deal, much more, symbolic and politically, driven, besides just the hockey team winning. And so what you see here is like it was a rebirth of the national psychology. There was, for the United States, it was like getting a one-up on the Soviet Union. And so the collective mood really shifted around that time. Okay, let's go back now. Last one to February of 1961. February 1st, the USA launched the Minuteman, for the first time, intercontinental missiles carrying nuclear weapons. February 3rd, Operation Looking Glass began, which basically was the ongoing, the USA always having planes in the air as self-defense in regards to the Cold War. So there's a lot of military connections with these, with this particular cycle as well. On February 28th, not long after that eclipse, also was the beginning of the Vietnam-USA war era. Okay. And then on the day of the eclipse, here's the other, really significant one that ties in some things for me, is the USA figure skating team plane crashed. Everyone on the plane died, and it was a tremendous national tragedy, which totally shook up the whole country and the collective mood. And so the big themes that I really want to point out are how there are events that really shake up the collective mood, the collective psyche, the national psychology. Like, it's a turning point, whether it's positive or whether it's negative, or, it depends on what people's values are, perhaps, but that is a significant thing. Also, U.S. military intervention, okay, or war is also a significant thing, but certainly intervention in other countries. And NATO seems to be also tied in with this eclipse cycle. And so, the changes and the shakeups that are happening in alliances globally, politically, militarily, economically, etc., these could all be, very much on the table with this eclipse. So, to wrap up the bigger picture about, predictions, then I want to talk just for a few minutes about how it's going to impact you personally and how I would recommend working with this eclipse. Basically, I would expect, very simply, unrest. Okay, there are going to likely be precipitating events, whether violence or whether, tragic things, or like unbelievably unjust things happening that really provoke the collective to take action, to rebel, to not go with the grain and the status quo. And so I mean, really, it's a very honestly volatile time. I would also say the markets could potentially, especially like the stock market, um, and things with digital currencies, especially that's the Aquarius energy in Uranus, um, be like huge changes. Pay attention, I would say, definitely to the digital currencies like cryptocurrencies, those kinds of things. But also in general, anything to do with money, anything to do with markets could also be very much in a very volatile time, suddenly up or suddenly way down. So those kinds of things. And I believe we are also likely to see some major shifts in regime changes, in terms of world leaders or, entire governments shifting, ending, and a new leader being put into place, or a new system or, government or party being brought to power. And so it's very, very, it's a crossroads time for the world and for especially the United States. As I already really explained, this is a huge time where we're being lit up astrologically, and so change is happening for sure here and with our relationships abroad. All right, enough with the world. Let's focus on you specifically and what you can do and what to expect. So the first thing I want to recommend is see if you can find out which house in your birth chart you have the sign of Aquarius. This is where this particular eclipse is activating, and you can see major endings and new beginnings and resets taking place in the areas of life associated with that house, right? For instance, if it was your second house, it's your finances. If it's your seventh house, it's your relationships. If it's your 10th house, it's your career. You can find that out online, or if you already know your chart, great. The wonderful aspects of a Uranian Aquarian eclipse is it really speaks to collective liberation. Like that energy is so in the air about those oppressed, those that have been, unjustly assaulted or maligned or oppressed. Like this is a liberating energy for the people, for the collective. And so this is a powerful time, I would say, to really plug into and connect with like what beyond just yourself and your own personal interests. What is it that's really important to you? Who is it that's really important to you? What causes, what organizations, what movements, and really plugging in part of your energy stream into that, and maybe it's, it doesn't have to be huge. It can also be like your local community or, your neighbor or, but tipping into the energy of service and focusing on doing things that are beyond just your self-interest. There's a tremendous activation of that with this particular eclipse. Also, of course, as there's tremendous disrupting energy, the beauty of that is it can be a whole system reset in which you get the chance to have a breakthrough. Uranian eclipses are really amazing opportunities to have a quantum leap or a breakthrough, meaning you've been afraid of saying the thing to your friend, to your partner, to your mom, of bringing up that you wanted to move, and you just have been afraid or break up or whatever, right? And this energy comes along and the dam breaks, and it's like, I have to tell you that I'm moving to California to open up a taco shack on Venice Beach because it's freezing cold here in Virginia. Anyway, so basically, the dam breaks and there's an energy for a breakthrough. And so I would recommend writing that. You want to really honor that energy in your life, wherever it's playing out, and maybe it's nothing to do with other people. Maybe it's your dynamics with your finances or your physical health or your home, or the stories that you're telling yourself about your future or limitations, etc. So this is a tremendous opportunity to really raise energy and break through old patterns and habits that you no longer want to continue. So some really nice practices I recommend to support that would be Kundalini practices, breath work practices, things that really stimulate a lot of chi and energy movement. Qigong would be amazing. Anything that brings you into that heightened sense of awareness, like an ice bath or a cold shower. So I know some people aren't not into that, but some people are. And it's that awakening up to the waking state that suddenly you have so much energy that you can decide to do something new. That is what you want to aim for. So this is, I really believe, a month to remember. Okay, February 2026. It's also going to be really connected as well to the eclipses that we're having in August, because we're having a Leo and then another Aquarius eclipse. So there'll be some callbacks around that time as well. One other piece I did want to mention is, if you want to understand some previews of this particular eclipse, you can pay attention to what happened on February 5th when Mercury crossed the eclipse point, and February 8th and 9th when Venus crossed the eclipse point. And those just give you little sneak previews of what the larger themes may be about with this eclipse. And then here's the big date, okay? February 28th. February 28th, 27, 28, 29, especially. Mars is crossing the eclipse point, okay? Which is a tremendous activation of the eclipse. And so that is a day, like the eclipse makes 20 degrees Aquarius super sensitive for at least a whole year. Mars crosses it on February 28th, and that is like setting fire on that sensitivity. And so huge action and shifts are likely to be happening very strongly at the end of February. And of course, that's already a few days before the lunar eclipse. So it's just like a whole smorgasbord, cluster fluff, whatever you want to call it, of so many things happening all at the same time. So I think that's what I got. I hope this was helpful. If you have, any comments or questions, then please put it here in the YouTube comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, okay, because that's wonderful. And I think that's it. So Godspeed. And again, final thing I will leave you with is really, it is a tremendous opportunity for spiritual activation of your free will. So it's a beautiful time to take advantage of, in addition to perhaps chaotic energy and intensity that's happening in the world. It's a beautiful time to really carve a new path for yourself, to take bold new action, to go in a new direction. If you've been feeling stuck, this is your opportunity to do something different about it. So Godspeed. Thank you for paying attention, for lending your hearts. Let us all lend our energy, attention, and action towards our one human family, towards the liberation of all beings, and especially outer peace begins with inner peace. Godspeed, y'all.